Welcome back, everybody. Later this morning, Fed Chairman Jay Powell is going to be testifying once again before the Senate Banking Committee with his semi-annual monetary policy report. Joining us right now with what he expects to hear from the Fed chair and to weigh in on the president's COVID relief efforts is Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey. He is now the ranking member of the Senate Banking Committee. And Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Why don't we start with what you expect from Jay Powell later today, because markets seem to be getting a little bit nervous. It's been a long time since we've heard the Fed have to talk about anything other than keeping rates incredibly low for an incredibly long period of time. But you do see the bond market signaling higher yields and people wondering what's going to happen once this economy reopens. What do you want to hear today?
Well, so Becky, I think you put your finger on it. What I'd like to hear is some acknowledgement that we're getting data that we haven't seen before in a long time. You touched on some of it. You know, what's with the backup in the yield on the 10-year? And the increase in the break-even inflation rate in our securities, all the asset prices, so many categories that feel like there are elements of a bubble, including some equities, including things like Bitcoin, despite the last couple of days, commodity prices. We're seeing actual inflation numbers starting to tick up. And this is happening at the end of a year in which we've had a record expansion of the monetary supply, M2 anyway. And we've got an accelerating recovery underway, it certainly looks like. And yet, we've still got overnight interest rates at zero. The Fed is buying $120 billion worth of bonds every month. You know, I think there's a real danger here, and I'd like to get a better understanding of how the Fed is looking at all these data points that suggest there's something new going on, and it's pointing in the direction of potentially significant inflation.
You know, Senator, this is such a weird time in the economy because you have more than 10 million Americans out of work, high unemployment numbers. You have businesses and industries that have been completely shut down. But then you have other industries and businesses that have done incredibly well. And I think that might be part of the most difficult part with trying to determine, if you're looking at these broad-based numbers that combine all of that into one, you're really talking about a tale of two economies here. And that's hard to sort through and hard to plan with and deal for. How would you suggest we make sure that we are taking care of the people who have just been hurt so badly by the pandemic and all the associated closures without injecting too much into areas that don't need it?
So first of all, I think it is absolutely not the role of the Fed to pick out subsets of our population or our economy and try to devise monetary policy for them. Like, to have monetary policy for restaurant workers doesn't work, doesn't make sense. The Fed has to look at the aggregate. It has to look at the macro picture. And the macro picture is one of tremendous growth. And I think the likelihood of an acceleration in that growth. Look, I mean, you know, on your show, you hear the debate about growth for this year is it 4.5 or is it 7? You know, it's very, very optimistic in what it looks like. So what do you do about the restaurant workers? I think that's the role of Congress, to decide what are we going to do about the folks who've been left behind because they happen to be working in an industry that is really, really bearing a huge disproportionate percentage of this burden. It's not something that the Fed should be doing. Similarly, by the way, there's a couple of other areas where I'm concerned about some folks advocating a creep in the Fed's mission, including becoming somehow climate regulators or focusing on wealth gaps between different ethnic groups and racial groups. These are not things that the Fed is well suited for. This is not the role of a central bank. What they need to do is maintain the value of the currency and maximizing broad economic growth. That's how you help everyone. And we in Congress should be looking at, and as we have, right, 5 times last year, several $1 trillion, much of it targeted, such as the PPP loan, which was designed and really overwhelmingly to allow small businesses to keep their workforce. That's what the focus should be.
How do you get at those questions with the Fed chairman today? What do you plan to ask him to figure out how he deals with that?
Well, I'll ask him directly, as I have in our private conversations, the same thing publicly. I mean, you know, I think one of the real dilemmas that the Fed could face this year, and I hope they don't, but it's quite possible. You know, what if interest rates continue to back up? What if the bond market is telling us something? What if inflation starts to pick up, yields start to rise? and we haven't gotten back to the 3.5% unemployment rate that we were at a year ago. What does the Fed do? We've seen what other countries have done and decided that the central bank is going to simply, by fiat, establish where interest rates are. I think that'd be a really bad outcome. I certainly hope they don't move in that direction. What does it take to begin the process of tapering the bond buying? They were still buying $120 billion of securities a month. Does that just go on forever? I mean, when you have strong economic growth already and prospects for even stronger growth, does it make sense to just continue this indefinitely? So these are some of the things I hope to explore.
Hey, Senator, I hope you don't mind me kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I'd seen some stuff recently about the backlash you're receiving because of the vote that you made to vote for the impeachment of President Trump.
Right.
You're a Republican. You're not running for re-election, so you don't have to worry about anybody coming in and trying to primary you. But you do have the GOP in Pennsylvania, your own state, now considering censuring you. You're somebody who I think has always kind of voted your principles and has talked about it no matter where the chips fall many times with us on the show. I just wonder what you're dealing with in terms of the backlash and what you think about that and the future of the party.
Well, as you point out, I'm not running for re-election. So there's been several counties have voted to censure me. Others may follow suit. I don't know what the state party is going to do. The thing that I think is important to focus on, this doesn't affect me. Right? I'm not looking for an endorsement in a Republican primary ever again. I think the important thing is, what's the message we're sending to voters across Pennsylvania? I'm not the only person that thinks that the president's post-election behavior was unacceptable. And if we send a message that a conservative Republican who has been a solid conservative for 10 years in the Senate casts one vote that many Republicans disagree with, that's somehow unacceptable, I don't think that's a message you send to grow the party, which is the job of the party, right? To grow the party and to win elections. So I think what we ought to do is focus on what unites us, the overwhelming number of areas where Republicans are in agreement, and we ought to be going forward on that basis.
What's it like in the Capitol these days with Republicans who agree with you and those who don't?
Look, in the Capitol, I think there's a very broad respect for having difference of opinions. We've gotten used to that. When you're in this business, you have colleagues and friends and people you work with every day who come down on opposite sides of any number of important issues. So we're accustomed to that, and I haven't seen any difference at all in the interaction among my colleagues.
Same thing to be said at home?
Well, at home, we hear from people on both sides. I hear every day from people who agree with my assessment of the post-election situation, and I certainly hear from people who disagree as well. We're a big state. We've got a wide range of opinions, and I get to hear the full spectrum.
Senator Toomey, thank you for your time and your candor with us. Good luck, and we'll be watching the hearings today. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Becky.